Okay, I am reading Holy Poverty, which is chapter 7 in the Wounds of God. Let me pour you some, Monfie, into this enchanting little pot. It is not at its best. It should settle. It should breathe, but never mind. Voila. I have given some to your abbot to draw the English damp out of his soul. The fog has penetrated him. He has become a little chill, a little gray. This will put the laughter back in his eyes. Look at him. You see, the frozen pond of austerity is melting at the edges. You will drink some more of my wine, mon Pierre, but a little non. Un soupçon. I wish I could speak French. It would sound way better. Gianni, this will not do. You can afford to roll unsteady into the office, but I lurch like a ship with the side stove in as it is. Leave me with a rag of dignity to cover my foolish soul. I'll not go down to choir drunk, breathing fumes of wine with every phrase I sing. Oh, don't look at me like that. I meant no rebuke. We'll drink some more wine over supper. Abbe Guillaume nodded mournfully. It is as I thought. You have seen through me. Air is a man, you say to yourself, with all the virtue of a cracked pot. Fear not, mon frere. The comparison suggests itself to me quite unbidden. There is nothing amiss with this one. He has suffocated his spirit, which was, alas, noble in folds of flesh, and I must be wary of the contamination of his gluttony. What is more, I must shield this young monk from the debauchery of his ways, and in no way seem to condone them. And then he speaks in French here, which says, your abstinence is my reproach. He smote his breast and hung his head sadly, then burst into roars of delighted laughter at Peregrine's discomfited silence. And then he speaks in French again and says, I will leave you to your dreary labors until supper time, but you must promise me then to put aside your dignity of office and be my companion, my old friend, not my judge. I have a conscience of my own to make me uneasy. Yes, still I swear it, I will not be needing to borrow yours. You have finished, Friar Thomas? How do you find my wine? Ah, it has lit in your eyes a little candle. Pleasant? Yes, I think it so too. Perhaps your good abbot will send you to France to visit me one day. I have a whole cellar full. What did you say, Mion Pierre? What was that very ungracious muttering? You think not, is that it? Ah, well, Friar Thomas, you would have been welcome. With your permission, mon Pierre, I will feast on the delights of your library until vespers. I will behave impeccably, as solemn and recollected as your extraordinary novice master. You will be with us later, Friar Thomas? Yes, bon, you make an excellent cockroach. As the abbé left the room, taking his color and laughter with him, and Brother Tom followed him out, Peregrine was left alone. The abbé, it's a French pronunciation of abbot, reminded him of all the world he had left behind, the wealth and sophistication of his youth. To leave it all had seemed a clear call, to which he had responded with an unhesitating yes. But it was true. Maybe he was a little chill, a little gray, a bit negative, perhaps. For the first time in years, his single-hearted conviction wavered. Oh God, if it were all a hollow edifice, this life he had built. If the gamble of faith were a losing bet, and the temple he had made of his life prove only an echoing vault, an empty house of death, all the sacrifice of chastity, poverty, obedience be no more than frustration, denial, loneliness. He shook the doubts away. There was work to be done. He must go to the infirmary to spend an hour with the aged, bedridden brothers. There he forgot himself for a while in their company and conversation, but his mood of uncertainty and uneasiness descended again as he made his way slowly to the chapel before vespers. He sat in his stall in the choir, the abbot's stall, centrally placed in the position of dominance for the man who carried the weight of status and power. When first he had come here, there had been a certain thrill in occupying that place. Pride, ambition, I suppose, he thought, sadly as he sat there now. What a struggle it has been. What a struggle to fight the pride of my spirit on the one hand and the rebellion of my flesh on the other, and still to lead with confidence, to teach and shape the men given into my trust. He sat motionless, unblinking, looking back over the way he had traveled. What am I become now, he asked himself, the sour defender of my own crabbed aestheticism? Is that all I have endured in the name of humility, only the symptom of my own vain pride? He thought of the merciless indifference with which he had driven himself in the early days, the hair shirts, the scourgings and fastings, the perverse satisfaction in his body's miserable craving for softness, for comfort, for pleasure, for tenderness. What was it for? And then the bleak and barren desert in which he had fought to come to terms with his disablement, the grim tenacity with which he had striven to prove again his competence, his ability to rule, to lead. He thought back on a day, one among many, when with a certain cruel detachment, he had very deliberately knelt to pray, brutally forcing the shattered knee to bend, letting the sickening waves of pain force his self-pity and distress into the background, so that the dizzy sweat of it hurting won a savage victory over threatening tears. Why? Systematically, he had stripped the life of his community of all pretensions, all luxuries, all self-indulgence, seeking the poverty that God had promised to reward with the kingdom of heaven. He saw again the suffering of men he had held to his own standard. Brother Tom, half frozen, prostrated on the threshold of the Abbey in the biting winter dawn. Alan Howick, now Brother James, drowning in his shame, his poverty of being. I thought it was for you, my lord, he prayed uncertainly in an anguish of self-doubt. Was it not so? Was it the conceit of my spirit? If so, the most cowardly sensuality would have been a better choice. Let me not be a sham, my God. I thought I had shaped a place of peace. I want your poverty. Oh, a pox on it all. I'm tired of trying. Cling to me now, my God, for I've lost the will to cling to you. He tried to concentrate on the Psalms, the prayers of Vespers, tried to ignore the insistent questions. Why? Why? Why can I not be as Gianni is? To laugh and to drink and to eat and forget. Why can I not forget the poverty of Gethsemane, of the cross? Nails, nails. Oh, my Jesus, my Lord. Your love has won me, and how should I forget? At supper with Pierre Giami that evening, he toyed absently with the food, and he had little heart for conversation. Brother Tom, seeing his superior out of sorts, made himself as unobtrusive as possible as he waited on them. Pierre Giami observed his old friend shrewdly. He loved him. He had never understood his brooding intensity, but marveled at his hunger for truth, for simplicity, for holiness. He tried to lift his friend's mood, to entice him out of his despondency, but without success. In the end, he decided to take the bull by the horns. It is your heart, your liver, or your soul that is afflicted, mon frere. Your good brother has made us an excellent repast, these delicious little cheeses, this crisp salad. It is not all suffering under your roof, but you do not taste them. You are looking at your supper as if it has done you wrong, and you are pausing only to decide whether to flog it or excommunicate it. Will you not tell me what troubles your heart? You have the face of a thundercloud. You will give yourself indigestion. Peregrine did not reply. He tried to pick up his beaker of wine, but failed, as he often did, to straighten his fingers sufficiently to get them around the vessel. He gave up the attempt and lifted it to his mouth with both hands. Brother Tom realized that both he and the abbé had stopped breathing as they watched him struggle and fail. Tom hurt for his abbot as he took the thing into his hands. I never knew a man hate his own weakness so much, he thought. Peregrine looked at Pierre Guillaume over the rim of his beaker as he drank. The stormy intensity of his eyes made the abbé stir uneasily. They had been the best of friends from youth, but despite all the years he had known him, the depth of passion he saw in Peregrine's eyes still made Guillaume feel uncomfortable, almost afraid. Peregrine set down his wine and pushed his plate of food away. Guillaume, am I a posturing fraud? He asked abruptly. No, don't smile at me. You have mocked me this day long for my efforts at holy poverty. What humility I have, I tell you straight, is too frail to bear the weight of many gibes. Abbé Guillaume looked at him with dawning comprehension. Ah, so that is what it is, mon frere. I apologize. Would that I had the quickness of compassion you have to see another man's distress. I'd never tended that my idiot buffoonery cause you pain. It's not your idiot buffoonery that hurts. That just makes me laugh, and heaven knows I can be melancholy enough. You do me good. No, it's not that. It's the thought that all I had hoped was humility might be no more than my own stiff-necked pride. That's what hurts. Am I a Pharisee, a shell of religion, a loveless hollow of vanity? No, said Brother Tom very quietly. It was not his place to speak, but he couldn't help it. Ah, listen to your cockroach, said Pierre Guillaume. Let his wisdom come for you. Speak, Frere Thomas. Peregrine looked up at Brother Tom. Yes, you may speak, he said. I cannot presume, Tom mumbled, self-conscious, to tell you what you are. All I can say is that I love you very much. Whatever you may be, it is not in me to love a man who is a proud hypocrite, and I think you should eat your supper. Father Peregrine smiled. Forgive me, I am behaving like a child. It is indulgent self-preoccupation on my part. Of your goodness overlook my discourtesy. Your jesting has unsettled me, Guillaume, for you, as well as I, are vowed to holy poverty. We, holy poverty. To renounce all ownership, to say the tunic on my back, the sandals on my feet are not mine, that is holy poverty. To own no estate, no gold or silver, to dress in simplicity and say of nothing, this is mine, that is holy poverty. But the warmth of a good fire on a chilly night, the savory juices of a sucking pig roast in honey, the delight of old, rich red wine, these are the bounties of God's immense kindliness. Why should we throw them back in his face? Me, I do not like a leaking roof, or the draughty east wind whistling around my hams, or the lifeless frigidity of water at the table. There must be some pleasure in life. Our flesh cries out for it. Peregrine did not reply at once, and then he said, I thought we were supposed to crucify the flesh, he said quietly. Ah, moderation. You ask too much. Your self-imposed penury is not holy. Penury? Penury? I don't know that word. Is not holy poverty. It is like the poverty of the world. It is too much like the real thing, you mean? Interjected Peregrine wryly. And then he spoke in French and said, You wallow in it, mon Pierre. That's what it is. Wallow in it. Peregrine grimaced thoughtfully, pondering the words. I suppose I do. Jesus wallowed in it, did he not? To choose a stable, not a modest mansion. A cattle trough, not a plain, respectable crib. A cross, not a clean, unexceptional deathbed. How do you judge that? Was it an ostentatious waste of his glory? Does it matter, he said. Follow me, and that I mean to do. Our life here is not the poverty of the cross. We do not pretend to it. We are not naked, we are not thirsty, we do not bleed, but we try at least to find the poor carpenter of Nazareth in all that we do, whatever the folly. You think it an unreasonable bargain to lay aside earth's pleasures to win heaven? But he laid aside heaven to win the sons of earth. Guillaume leaned back in his chair, regarding Peregrine with amusement. You have not changed. Your rhetoric is as impressive as ever, but you are wrong in one thing. You are too late to win grace, or heaven, or strike any kind of bargain with God. It is not a prize to be won or a deal to be negotiated. It is a gift already given. You comprehend? A gift. Receive it and be glad.
Girls, be quiet.
Abigail and Hannah, come here now. Okay, guys, I asked you once because I'm recording and you did not listen. Go up to your room, please, and shut the door. Immediately.
Hannah, come on.
Hannah, go sit in the rocker in my room and shut the door until I'm done reading, and you go sit in your room. I've seen man's faces alight with peace, with joy, content. Good, wholesome food, and enough of it. We have that. All right, it's a bit chilly, I grant you, and we are frugal, but we do not go without. But the dainties of the rich, platters of the silver, and the linen in the church altar frontals of cloth, of gold, a chalice studded with jewels, such things would shame our vows. Your purity contemns my self-indulgence, said Peregrine. You make me blush. Oh, wait, I said that backwards. I'm sorry. So Peregrine was saying that. A chalice studded with gold, such things would shame our vows. And then Guillaume replied, Your purity condemns my self-indulgence. You make me blush. And then Peregrine says in response, Guillaume, it's not funny. Why do you mock our simplicity? Am I pretentious to insist on it? No, it cannot be right to live like kings when we are supposed to be like Jesus, can it? And Guillaume says, my dear friend, it is because you are a little crazy that I love you so. Yes, he laid aside everything and became poverty for us, but we are not Jesus. You overreach yourself. Be realistic. And Peregrine says, are we not? He leaned forward, his eyes burning, urgent and intense face. If we who are the body of Christ are not Jesus, who will ever be? The world has need of his presence, the presence of Jesus in the word of the Gospels, in the holy bread and wine, and in us. Somewhere in all the cynicisms and disappointments that bind and stunt their lives, men need to find a living Jesus, one who can hear the pain and understand their grief and shame, someone to be the love of God with them. It has to be a poor man, doesn't it? To touch and heal the pain of men's poverty. I mean all kinds of poverty, the poverty of their need and their brokenheartedness, of their sin. It would need a man poor in spirit and poor in means to comfort the loneliness of the poor. It is not possible for a rich man's hand to dry the tears of the poor, is it? How should I reply? I admire you in a way. You are right, Montfrere. But who can live like this? It is not sensible. What would you have me do with my altar frontals? Give them to a peasant who is short of blankets? What shall I do with my chalices? Distribute them to beggars that they may fill them at the horse's trough? And what shall I tell my bishop, my patrons? He leaned forward and spoke with a frown, a vehemence, serious enough now. The poor carpenter of Nazareth, he would not stand a chance in the grand machinery of the church. We also have a stable on our estate. He would be at home there. He looked at Father Peregrine, shaking his head as he relaxed back into his chair. He speared a small piece of cheese with the point of his knife. As he put it in his mouth and ate it, he looked thoughtfully at Brother Tom. Why do you say all this, Friar Thomas? What do you say to all this, Friar Thomas? Brother Tom had been sitting patiently, wondering if this involved discussion would never end, and marveling that his old abbot could become so engrossed in thought as to become indifferent to a plateful of good food. He looked up at the mention of his name. What do I say? He echoed uncertainly. To follow Jesus, must a man live stripped of everything, as your abbot would have me believe, or can he without sin enjoy the good things of life, if his heart is thankful? Jesus, Brother Tom. struggled for an intelligent answer. Well, who is your Jesus? I can see Father Abbott's Jesus in the Gospels, but where is yours? There was a silence broken by Abbe Guillaume's bellow of laughter and his fist crashing down onto the table. You two together, you are dangerous for the gospel. You have caught me in my own folly as you caught that filthy Augustinian, you young rogue. Ah, you have finished me. Pour me some more wine, Montfrere. Let me drink to your answer. Bien, enough. Let us turn our talk to other things, or you will have me kneeling in tears, promising to distribute the substance of my house to all the vagabonds of France. I know you of old. You will lead me out of prudence into your old, wild extremism. And then Peregrine says, well, who says this? There is a book in your library, Montpierre, a valuable book. Our library is impoverished for lack of it. Will you lend it? See, I do not ask you to give, though you are rich and I am poor in the matter of this little book. Only lend it that my scribes may copy it. And Guillaume says, what book? Ah, is this the man upon whom earthly things have no hold? Why do you inquire, what book, mon ami? What is that to you who have left all to follow Jesus, the real Jesus of the Gospels, not the vain idol worshipped by worldly men by me? I didn't say you worshipped a vain idol, nor yet that I am free of worldliness, though I wish to God I were. What book? But a little book, though valuable to me, a little text of Aelred de Rivalue, a book of sermons I have not seen before. You know the book I mean. I see you do by the possessive glint in your eyes. You want to borrow the book of homilies by Abbot Aelred, written and bound by his own hand? Oui. For how long? Asked Peregrine. How long? Since it must be only the spiritual substance of the text you value, and not the book itself, I would have thought you could preach your own homilies, the equal of Abbot Aelred's Montfrere. It is a book, only a book. Maybe you will let me keep the original. I can have a very nice copy made for you. Our Friar Jan has an excellent hand. Stop it, Guillaume. How long do you want it for? 3 months. Peregrine hesitated. Oh, regards, Friar Thomas. Oh, very well, you can borrow it, said Peregrine. I know you will take care of it. 3 months only, though. I will hold you to it. 3 months. I will return it myself, guarded in my bosom as though my life depended on it. Is that your Compline bell already, Montpierre? I am sure that bell has a little crack in it somewhere. It sounds like a bucket. Guillaume, no man would find silence a hardship if he had you to live with. 'Twould be sweet refuge from the endless abuse. Come then to prayers. The Abbé Guillaume held the door open with all courtesy for Abbot Peregrine to pass through, and winked at Brother Tom as they followed him out into the cloister. This has been a hard one to read. I'm sorry. In the autumn of that year, as the evenings were drawing in and the nights were beginning to tingle with the threat of frost through the afternoons still basked in gold, Brother Tom came one afternoon to Father Peregrine's house with a package that Brother Martin, the porter, had asked him to deliver. Who has brought this? This is from Pierre Guillaume. Stay a minute. He undid the parcel, which contained the little book of Aelred de Rival's homilies and a letter. Peregrine read through the letter swiftly and looked up at Tom. Do you read French? No? Let me tell you what he says then. He sends you his greetings. He remembers you with affection, says he has no cockroaches in the whole of his house. He has searched it nostalgically. Enclosed, the book, his apologies for keeping it these 6 months. He is sure I'm not surprised, and no, I'm not. I'm surprised to get it back this soon. He would have brought it himself, but his circumstances have changed. He would not forget our conversation here. When he went back, he proposed the sale of all the treasures of his abbey. All of it. Oh, Guillaume, bless you, you never did anything by halves. They laughed him to scorn, he says. He resigned himself to accepting the rejection of his proposal, tried to forget the whole thing, but could not. He's made an enemy of his prior and upset the bishop. Dear heaven, that was rash. He has left his community and gone to live with the Carthusians at St. Michael. He says their library is second to none, especially now that it has a copy of this Abbot Aelred's sermons in it. And he has his own little garden with bees and vegetables. He is rearing a little pig. His mouth waters every time he looks on it. It is a good wine country, he says, but not the best, which he laments. He has made some friends among the peasants there who bring him cheeses and olive oil. How did he manage that, I wonder, in such seclusion? He's bending a rule somewhere, if I know him. He has a peach tree in his garden, and he says he also has peace in his heart and love for us, and loves us for what we said. He bids us share a pot of wine by a good fire to remember him and guard against chilblains in the abominable English cold. The poor carpenter of Nazareth, he said, is teaching him the tricks of the trade. And he ends by saying in French, in our sorrows we always have reason to rejoice. Poor ourselves, we bring wealth to many, penniless we own the world. Guillaume de Saint Michael. Oh, Tom, I hope he's done the right thing. What do you mean? Well, he's given up all he had, status, comfort, wealth. The Carthusian rule is very austere. And remember, I told you the different convents or monasteries in this case, have different rules and are more difficult than others. And he has exchanged it for peace in his heart. I thought that was the bargain you urged him to make. It was. Yes, it was. What looks like sacrifice is the richest treasure of all. I know it. I know. I have chosen Jesus to be my heaven, and him in all his poverty, all his grief. It's just that sometimes I get cold feet. In the quiet bedroom, I listened to my sister's breathing and the wind blowing round the roof of the house outside. Mother leaned down and picked up the tall candlestick from the floor. They're asleep, she whispered. Shall we go downstairs? I nodded. We tiptoed out of the room and went quietly down the stairs, and as I opened the door of the living room and the lamplit shone out into the passage, Mother blew out the candle. And that was the end of chapter 7, which was a hard one to read orally because it was switching speakers so often without saying who was speaking. So I apologize if it got a little confusing. But all in all, they had a conversation about Pierre Guillaume's love of food, love of things, and he decided to give them up